I'm sorry to laugh. There is this thing about funerals, when you have a wake and you find it's a bad habit. But then you add the fact that we now have we have digitized war, and we are now at the point where this virtual world that we have created is colliding with the actual world in which we live in more ways than we can even begin to think of. And so on top of all of the other problems that are taking place, we now have the fact that communication is instant, and that ideas can spread very rapidly, and it's a bit of a mess. Everything is speeding up, and we're not doing anything about it. I think there are things that we can do, but I think that we have to somehow. I mean, I've never looked at Trump's tweets and won't. And if everyone would just stop either reading them or responding to them, and if everyone would just, and of course this isn't going to happen, but if everyone would start focusing on the issues that our kids, that are really going to impact our children's lives, then we would be a lot better off. And if the talking heads would stop getting so caught up in the minutiae of what he's doing, and if so, we can do the ifs. But just for a second, the list. This is Dan Coates, who is the director of the National Intelligence Agency, and this is from his report. I've been analysing. For fun, I deconstruct congressional hearings. I actually get quite caught up in them because from a linguistic point of view, they're really interesting. But this is an important piece because he talks about the risk of conflict, including among great powers, is higher than any time since the Cold War. And then the threats from mass destruction, not only from countries that have the weapons but are getting them. And this to me is really what Split Second Solution is about, is that the geopolitical order and stability is now so frayed. We have to ask ourselves, is there any possibility of governments working together to actually address any of these issues? Do they have the competence? And from watching the hearings yesterday with Mark Zuckerman and the level of questioning that was presented, it was really somewhat nerve-wracking. But the fact that I think there is a common understanding in Washington that there is a cyber war taking place. We're now at the point where you can add biological and chemical weapons. We know that the life science discoveries that are being made can be for good or not so good. There are new weapon systems that are being put together. And then, of course, AI. And I don't think we have... artificial intelligence gets used in ways which clearly people don't have a very good conception of what AI is and what is going to happen if Nick Bostrom, who's at Oxford, the Centre for Humanity, is that the future of humanity? Once we get to the point where artificial intelligence uncouples from human, right? Once we are not part of the scenario, which they feel is likely to happen probably this century, then all bets are off. And this whole idea of supercomputing, so as long as we're part of that configuration, then it can only go so fast, because we can only go so. I mean, it's heading, but once it gets to a point where it's generating itself, then the speed with which the changes will take place are huge. So the risks to humanity are huge, and a lot of it is around not just what's happening to the planet, but the social disruption. The more stressful the situation, the more events will take place, whether they are small groups, they're at the country level, nation level, or at the individual level.